Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time to review Maestro, directed by Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper's playing Leonard Bernstein, sort of theory of everything-esque biopic. It is kind of about his music, but it's more focused on his relationship, the woman behind the man, so to speak. Well, you know, the film's really about marriage. I think that's like the key point of the film and what makes it interesting, what gives it an angle rather than just being yet another biopic, womb to tomb style. And Bradley Cooper, in what is only his second film, which is honestly like stunning given, you know, what he put on screen, I think he does a phenomenal job with this movie. Just visually, it is absolutely immaculate. On every level of craft, it is, you know, easily like some of the best work of the year. And for the performances are, of course, I think some of the best of the year. If anything, I think the territory that we're gonna disagree on a little bit is like the story and whether it coheres and whether it feels like something we haven't seen before versus have seen before. I go back and forth a little bit, but I was a little bit more reassured on my second viewing that I actually really dig this movie. I mean, certainly scene to scene, you would have to say that Maestro is like masterfully done and that the scenes are extremely well crafted. If there's one thing I can say confidently about his direction, it's that it allows for the performances to really shine. And in some ways, I almost feel like I could just call this a performance feast because he uses a lot of long takes that just lets him and Carey Mulligan just banter. We just watch them like be and kind of overlap with the dialogue. A lot of the motivation to make the movie almost feels like perhaps Bradley Cooper was just very interested in embodying a man. And I think that there is something to be said about how these characters are brought to life on screen. But if I'm to call something masterful, I feel like I need to be more convinced that every choice made in the movie is in service of maybe something larger or deeper. And I'm very halfway on whether or not Maestro really like gets to something. I think there are many fantastic individual scenes, but I wasn't completely sold on the flow of the movie. So I actually kind of like how each scene feels like it picks up in the in-between moments of their careers. Like we jump forward through time in like kind of random gaps, it almost seems. Where we find them sometimes feels like it's not even a necessarily extraordinary moment. Nonetheless, I feel like these little chapters do reveal a lot about who these characters are. And the film is certainly much more interested in that than simply portraying Leonard Bernstein as a prodigy and as just an unmatched talent, which it does, but it just goes to show that you don't have to like sacrifice digging into your subject, showing the good and the bad, showing the ugly. At the same time, it's kind of just about a guy who somebody says he is the way he is and cannot be molded, and I will allow him to inflict pain on me, and I'll just like, no, but like also lets him give to the world, give the gift that he has. Yeah, but then it's kind of like just like, oh, I'm like the woman making the sacrifice for my man's talent. Yeah. Okay, so this is the interesting part of the movie. Like, it really doesn't feel equal. It feels unfair, it feels unresolved, and even in the end, I don't think that anything is really made up for that lack. And there's like a devastating, you know, monologue that Carey Mulligan has in a beautiful like 4x3 close-up where she explores that, and it's like some of the best acting work of her career. You know, if anything, I would have maybe liked to see that be more resolved. But for me, I don't really mind the messiness and the complication. And honestly, it was just so compelling to watch these two characters like grapple with themselves. He is her source of light and her source of energy, and just being in his spotlight for just a little bit seems like it might just be good enough to make a marriage work. And meanwhile, Bernstein has struggled with, you know, depression and melancholy, and I think it touches on something that a lot of great, you know, giant artists may go through. Like, I think Priscilla shows that, you know, Elvis was a very kind of tortured soul as well, and someone who is in need of a lot from others, struggling and tangling with the fact that he knows he has this innate God-given ability and is maybe not living up to that. And as they're both struggling with their own things, there's a light that is sort of flickering between them. And it's really like, I think the through line in the story is like whether that light is gonna go out or not, and whether there's something there and what is it that it does remain. But I definitely wish Felicia was more developed. Like, who is Felicia outside of Leonard Bernstein? We know that she has a music career, but we don't really know what it means to her to make music. We don't really even know that much of what it means for Leonard Bernstein to make music. I mean, part of that is portrayed when he is conducting and you just see like his spirit, but I don't think anyone's gonna come away from this movie being like, yes, Leonard Bernstein's music came from this place within, and maybe not every music biopic needs to do that, but I also feel like the movie doesn't answer like why Felicia specifically is this spark for Leonard Bernstein. And maybe the movie just didn't dive deeply enough into one aspect for me. I think sometimes the film strokes are too broad, even though I do think it kind of gets at their personalities, with how these leads are able to embody these characters so deeply. But I still feel like the movie didn't quite have the depth to match the style, and at the end of the day, it feels a little too familiar to these other films that are about like the woman behind the man. Between this and Star is Born, we can debate which one's Bradley Cooper's best performance, but I thought this was extraordinary work from him, and people seem to be like really into nitpicking method acting right now. The fact that he took 6 years to gain the ability to conduct that orchestra, like that's actually what it takes though. If you want to make that one shot, one single continuous take, and you want it to be you probably would need like that amount of time to give that good and that convincing of a performance. And he was interested in conducting always. So if that's just what brings him joy and what he wanted to do for the character, like, why do people care? Is he harming anybody? No, he's not harming anybody. I don't know why people are making him into a villain. Like, this is someone who is really dedicated to like making interesting movies. I don't see what all the hate's about. Like, I'm really excited about Bradley Cooper. And I also liked seeing a little bit of him come through in this. It made sense to me why he wanted to explore Bernstein when Bernstein was talking about his variety of passions and how he doesn't want to put himself into a box, and how he just loves people so much that it's hard for him to be alone, and that he just has this like effusive energy that he wants to give to the world, but he's also lonely. He likes to be creative by himself. All those things probably apply to Bradley Cooper. He seems like a very empathetic and very like wants to be loved and wants to give love kind of person. I think that's really cool. I like that kind of person. I feel like in some ways people have been trained to think that a certain type of performance is something they should hate. Like, oh, if someone's trying too hard to get an Oscar and they're doing Gary Oldman Darkest Hour or Eddie Redmayne Theory of Everything, if someone's trying too hard, we have to go after it. If it's not your favorite kind of performance and it doesn't get you lost in the character, that's totally fine. But I don't think you can say it's bad. It's like me going to a musical theater performance and saying that everybody was too big in the musical. It's like, that's kind of just what's happening, everybody. Nobody would ever deny that the cathedral scene didn't pay off, because that truly is one of the best scenes of the year. Extremely moving. I get chills just thinking about it. And just the way that the scene is punctuated. I won't even say what it is. Brought tears to my eyes every time. Also want to shout out like literally every scene that Carey Mulligan's in where it's like a longer take on her. The scene when she gets bad news. The scene when she is somewhere where she doesn't want to be but doesn't want to let it on. And the scene where she's in close-up and she's talking about like a date she went on. I think those scenes are just some of the best of the year, like purely because her performance is so amazing. And I don't think I can say Bradley Cooper is better than her. Like, if they both won Oscars, I'd be pretty thrilled about it. I have not seen Carey Mulligan better in any movie. I don't know if either would be like my number one choice, but I wouldn't really be disappointed if they both won Oscars. And I also think there's a lot of interiority that people aren't calling out to Bradley Cooper's performance. Like, there's that scene when he withholds some information from his daughter. There's a really long like look on his face that we linger with, and it was really powerful. There's a lot of great internal work there. It's not just the makeup. I do like that the movie isn't trying to go for like an obvious theme, and it's trying to form a well-rounded, like complex portrait of this character or this relationship. But I've seen biopics like The Imitation Game or Mr. Turner where I felt like it showed these characters' contradictions in ways that made me really appreciate like the paradoxical aspects of these people, and feel like I really saw the well-rounded human beings in there. And for some reason I feel like this movie only half gets there. People saying that the movie is all style and all glitz and means nothing, like I definitely don't think that's the case either. I don't think it's like a vanity project. I've heard a couple people say that. Like, I really don't think so. I would give this a 9 out of 10. I would give it a 7 out of 10. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Do your best Bernstein conducting an orchestra impression in the comments.